Hey everybody, it's Mr. XStitch here. It's nice to see you. Thanks for joining me on my YouTube channel. Today, I've got the first part of what I'm calling an ongoing series of designer discourse, where I have a good old chinwag with a cross-stitch designer. I'm starting with a good one. Yes, indeed, it's the chameleon, Maria Diaz. Tell me your entire back history, the thing that came, because I reckon you must be one of the nation's most loved cross-stitch designers based on like the mainstream audience, because you've been around a while, you never get old. That sounds wrong, but you know what I mean. Like you're always like relevant, kind of. How did it come to be? How did you come to be Maria Diaz Cross-Stitch Designs?
There's a story I've told loads of times. When I was at art school, I needed a job, so I silkscreen printed in the DMC factory, and they needed someone to do some design work on their brand new computer system, and I sort of fell into it like that.
Was that in Leicester?
Because I was arty. Huh?
Where was that? In Leicester? Or
In Leicester.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you started out screen
then,
printing. Was that like doing like printed tapestry kind of designs and stuff, or?
Yeah, when the patterns are printed on the cotton,
Mm-hmm.
so they were silkscreen printed in the factory. So I went in and did a big silkscreen press and did that over and over for a few months, I think, while I was on holiday from college. I think it was a summer job.
Mm-hmm.
So doing some silkscreen printing. And again, I was studying art, so I was interested in the stuff they did there, and I'd always done different bits of craft. And they needed someone to do some drawing for some silk screens, so I did that. And then they had this new computer system, and I suppose because I was young and interested, I sort of went and had a play with that, and was fortunately very good at it very quickly. But things are a lot easier to pick up when you're sort of 20.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there a bit like so? Because you did fine art and design.
No, I did fine art painting.
Fine art painting, right? So where was the bit that you went? I'm doing fine art. I'll look like. Did you look for DMC? Were you already familiar with them? Were you familiar with cross stitch beforehand, or what?
At the time, I didn't do cross stitch
Right.
or embroidery other than for leisure, so it was actually working there. So I came from a design aspect, but my dad's a designer.
Right.
So I'd worked for him. I'd done that. He did interior shops and things,
Okay.
so retail and exhibition design.
Kind of like industrial design, like use of space and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from the age of sort of 14, I would go and help out, and I used to draw visuals of the shops and plans and stuff like that. So design, I think design is something that you do naturally.
Mm-hmm.
I find it, it's like rearranging your furniture in your living room. It's something innate. I was an accounts clerk for a shoe company. I redesigned all their forms so that they would
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
So it's something that you just, I don't go around and put my cupboards in order or anything like that, but anything aesthetic, anything visual, I sort of rearrange to make sense.
Upon reflection, like for a while I had a job, I used to work for children's centres in Milton Keynes, and I was a monitoring and evaluation officer, but same as you, like I did like the logos, and I would make the questionnaires look nice and help arrange all their things, because you sort of understood about spacing and stuff like intrinsically. I don't think necessarily. Yes. That's quite funny. So it was always within you then, kind of design.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's just it's just the way you think, the way you see things, see the world, and make it more logical.
Yeah. It's a weird one, because you get this art versus craft versus design debate all the time, don't you? Particularly in our field. And I listened to a lecture once by a guy called Paul Sainsbury, who I think was, I'm going to get this wrong, but he was like the head of like design at East Anglia University. I'm sure I've got that completely wrong, but like a player in the world of design.
Yeah.
And he talked about sometimes people say art versus craft versus design is like it's relating to mediums and stuff like that. But that's like saying blue eggs versus brown eggs versus white eggs.
Yeah.
And he said that he thought it was more to do with like the relationship. So for instance, art is almost like a one-to-one relationship where you see something artistic and you have a personal response to it. Whereas design is like one to many, where a thing is created that works well for many people simultaneously.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think so. I think for me, I think an artist is someone who wants to convey their message.
Mm-hmm.
They want to speak to you, whereas a designer it's a purpose.
Mm.
So it's I suppose it's um, less self-indulgent.
Yeah, no, I can dig it. I take some comfort. Like a while ago, particularly with Mr. XStitch stuff and stuff, I realised I wasn't an artist because I'm not trying to convey this message. I'm not telling people my expressions in that way. Being a designer, you make something that's pleasurable for other people to produce. Certainly in the world of cross stitch, right? You produce things that
Yes,
other people want to make.
and you fulfill a brief, whether it's set by yourself or by a magazine or by a private commission. You have criteria to meet.
That's an
Whereas
interesting one as well, isn't it? Because it makes it harder and easier at the same time, doesn't it? When you have to tick someone else's boxes,
Yes.
you don't have to search your soul, but you have to give their soul a good slapping around. That's not the right way.
Yes, and I think it's fitting something into what your ideas are and what is required. And I think coming from a business point of view, so I've always done cross stitch as a job, as opposed to I didn't come from it because it was something I loved doing, and then became a designer. And I think sometimes it's like some designers are amazing, and you can tell it's them, and you can feel their love for the design, for the medium,
Yeah.
for cross stitch. And I love designing,
Yeah.
and I like embroidery, and I like cross stitch, and I like, I like the medium, but it's the design that I enjoy as opposed to the sewing itself.
Yeah. So you start working for DMC making patterns. Was that for their kits that they were just putting out wholesale into the retailers and stuff? Do you remember the kind of stuff you started out doing?
Yes, it was lots of. It was very similar to the stuff that I did as a child with my nan. So it's like pretty flowers and things printed. I mean, it's still popular today, but like antimacassars.
Yeah.
On the backs of chairs, and it's that sort of stuff that I remember my grandmother having, and we'd print, and they'd be cushions, and some of them were done in like candle wicking, so they're white on white, but the patterns themselves were all very floral. And then, like I say, when it was the start of licensed properties, so it was when Country Companions and things started to come in, so when people started doing collections of cute stuff that had come over from America.
And were you a sort of named designer, or was it sort of anonymous?
I was just anonymous.
Yeah.
It was just something that I did. So it was a DMC label as opposed. I wasn't a name, so there was no point putting my name on it.
Sure. Yeah. So at what point
Sold
do you
it.
think you became a name? How did you transition? Did you start doing like stuff for magazines, or?
I think my name was always quoted when you did an original design, but I think when I left DMC and went freelance, that was when I launched myself as a name and as a designer.
And how long ago was that?
Quite a long time ago.
It was before the turn of the century, and we'll leave it at that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Probably about 97.
Right. Cool. And then you started working for the mags. You've probably been in all of them, right? You must. Yeah, you must.
Yeah, I think when I moved back down to London from Leicester, and I was working as a specialist consultant. Well, I was working for my dad, and I was working as a specialist consultant on a part work that started up. So that was quite a good contract, because that's a few days a week. And then I sort of touted myself out to every cross-stitch company, magazine, anywhere.
Was it quite thriving back then? Was there a lot of it going on?
Yeah. Well, it was really, really popular. So I think it sort of, from when I started, it just got more and more popular. I mean, the likes of Leslie Tier, who was an amazing name at the time, and Jane Greenough.
Yeah.
And all those were sort of superstars.
Yeah.
And you went to an exhibition and there's loads of crowds and autographs, and it was quite amazing. So cross stitch then there was a lot of sales, really popular.
And then did it take you long, because this is the thing, obviously, isn't it, when you're a designer you do what you're commissioned to, and I guess most of the mags do that thing where they just tell you what they want, what they really, really want, and then you go and kind of produce it over time scale, right?
Yeah, it's Easter, let's do bunny rabbits. It's Christmas, we want so you get that, and it's just trying to put a different spin on it and look at what's actually popular. So I used to collect postcards, and I worked opposite the Victoria and Albert Museum, so
nice.
I'd go for lots of inspiration and things. But I think it's looking round what's current in shops, what people are looking at, what people are buying, all the what's on greetings cards, so what's in, like how all of a sudden llamas became popular.
Yeah.
So it's like picking up on things like that and going, oh, what about this and what about that? And I think you'll get good editors will always keep ahead of trends, but as a designer you're always free to put ideas forward, which is, so if you see something and you're like, that would look amazing, then I will send an email off to someone and go, oh, have you thought about doing this?
And how far, I mean, have you got an archive of everything you've done? Like, do you ever find yourself repeating yourself?
Oh yeah, I think you do, but that's when you try and put a different spin on it. So it's like I'll go through stages where I'm going to try and design things without putting backstitch in, which I find really difficult because I tend to draw the lines first. So I will draw it all and then try and take it out, so try and simplify it, or change my colour palette, or try and do it in a different way. Because you've been designing things for nearly 30 years, you're going to come round again, aren't you?
Yeah. And I think, I mean,
so that's a generation, 30 years, isn't it?
Yeah. It is. But that's cool in a way, because there'll be loads of other people who'll see your stuff and be like, this is amazing, I've never seen this before. And you're like, haha, you should have been here in 2003.
But also you want to, when you do find something, it's like, that was a really good idea, but I could do it like this now, or I could change that, or you want to update it.
Do you find that even though you're working to other people's commissions, do you feel like you've got a certain style? Do you know what your style is?
I have people say people can tell it's my design, but I like to mess about, so I don't think so.
You're like a chameleon.
I like to. So I can tell there's certain things. I think I'm more versatile now than I was when I started. So because I do actively try and do things in a different style.
Yeah.
I try and do things a different way round. And
one of the things I do enjoy about yours, and maybe one of the tells, if you like, is your use of backstitch. Like, you're excellent at it. Like, for me, I've spoken to designers before, and one of the things I always think, or I've seen people who are like new to it, done a few designs. I remember one girl gave me a cross-stitched card, and her backstitching on it, like, it was a design she'd made and she'd put the backstitch on it, and I was just like, that's really impressive, because to me it's one thing to do a flat cross-stitch design, but the minute you use the backstitch to create texture, contours to just tidy things up and stuff like that. That's like step 2, like next level.
Yes, I suppose so. I suppose it is, but again, I was an artist first, so I draw. So I start with the lines, and then I paint with the stitches. And then I will often take the lines out, or I will change the colours. And it's like when you add depth in, it's like half cross stitches and adding. I suppose it's adding more. I'd like to add more embroidery stitches on things. I'm quite. I want to merge things, like do counted embroideries and things like that at the minute.
Yeah.
But again, it's having the time to sit and play, because I'm too busy making cardboard houses.
Yeah. Do you do French knots much, or is there a sort of tipping point where you're like, right, I've given people enough pain?
Because I love them, and I like doing them as well.
Right.
It took me a while, but I like doing them, and I like the texture it gives. But I am aware how painful people find them. So I do, you could always use a bead instead.
Yeah, I like that. I've seen people do embroidery that it's they love French knots because they've done. There's a picture of Bob Ross, the guy that paints the happy little accidents in the trees and stuff, and he's all of his hair's done in French knots and stuff like that.
Yes.
And you can tell some people go big, and you're just like, whoa, that's amazing. I lose it a bit quite quickly when I try and do those.
But then I suppose it's it's the crosses that you have a passion for. So I think with cross stitch, because you get a lot of people that just like cross stitch, and it's the mindfulness of the stitching that crosses, one at a time, and the repetitiveness of that, as opposed to freestyle embroidery or something.
Yeah, some people get hemmed in by the crosses, don't they? And for some people there's a satisfaction, like a security within that space, and like the freedom to stitch whatever you want can seem a bit daunting.
But then it is quite amazing when you see a design that is nothing but crosses, and what you can achieve with just that one stitch is amazing.
Where do you look for cross stitch? I know you said you seek external design and art inspiration and stuff like that, but I mean, do you keep up with trends? Are there designers that you admire who are like up and coming, or who are your favourites?
I like. I'm going to forget everybody's names.
It's all right, don't worry.
I like Durian.
Durian, yeah. Durian Twins, yeah.
Because her designs always make me smile. Always, whatever, and you see a lot, and she puts them up. And any time I see anything, it makes me smile. And it's the humour I think she puts in as well. That's quite good. Do I? Probably not as much as I should. It's like I'll look through the magazines and I'll pick up things that I think are clever. But I don't, and I'll go through Facebook and I like things, but I like the pictures. I don't then follow where they came from or who it is, unless it's someone obvious, like Leslie Tear's stuff comes up and I can tell that's hers by the way she designs things.
Do you find yourself drawn to anything like mosaic or stained glass or any of those like that are not dissimilar? Like, pixel art's obviously a thing because that's just tiny squares and stuff. But sometimes I think when you see mosaics or you see, stained glass or any of those things where like colours and shapes are like put next to one another, it has a certain familiarity.
Yeah, I think. But then anything. I was walking the dog this morning and there's like one tree that's bright red amongst like all the sort of browns and greens, and you sort of have to stop and go, whoa. And it's like if you're in town and the cathedral stained glass, you'll stop and notice things. I don't know that I make a conscious of it being shapes and stuff. It probably is. I mean, I like tiles. You just tend to be drawn to things that are pretty or colourful.
Yeah, I can dig that. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, sometimes I'm just working that out in my head, and I try and look for things where you can make a simple parallel. Sometimes because it's sort of for me, it's like can that transfer into cross stitch quite easily? But then I think that's probably maybe part of my shortcoming because I never really did art or anything like that. You've got the confidence to look at a tree and go, yeah, I could draw that. And whereas I've got on going, I could draw that in like a 3-year-old style or something like that.
Yeah, no, I suppose so. Yeah, so I don't. Yeah, some things it's like tiles. Um, I did get commissioned to do a tile pattern recently. So you're doing ceramic tiles in cross stitch, but how do you make that look like ceramic tiles and not just a pattern?
Yeah, without like anti-aliasing 25 colours to kind of. And yeah, no, I'm just thinking about like sometimes like I can rely on the software to do the color stuff. I mean, this goes to show how often I actually do designing these days, which is very rare. Whereas I guess you'll make conscious decisions about overlaps of color and transitions and depth and shade and stuff like that, right?
Yes, yes. I, yeah, I'll pick my colours, so I'll get my shades out and I will pick what colours I'm going to use, or I'll design something. And if you look at my designs, you'll find I'll use, if I'm colouring something red, there'll be 3 shades in it. So when I tend to do 3 shades if I can on every colour, because you can get depth in there. So you can get a rounded apple. You can make it interesting with 3 shades. So my rule of thumb is 3 shades, and then if it's more in depth, then I can use more. I can push to 5 or 7, and it's and change from like red to orange or something like that, because that's the simple way of picking your colours.
Yeah. Yeah, I think sometimes we can, because I always think as well, part of the trick with cross stitch design is to make sure that it's a pleasant experience for the other person to stitch. So
Yes.
you can provide photorealism, but if someone's got 145 colours to deal with all of a sudden, they might end up in tears. So I guess that less is more approach almost guarantees
Yeah, I
success.
think also that if someone's buying just a pattern, they've got to then go and buy the threads. And if your pattern is 30 threads, that's quite a big investment. You know, a lot of cross stitchers already have them all, but you know, so if you try and keep it down, and it's sometimes it's impossible. And when I go through, when I've designed something and I go through, and I've realised that I've used 6 of a single colour, I'm like, well, those 6 stitches don't really need to be in that colour, do they? Because then someone's having to buy a skein of that thread to do 6 stitches.
I feel like if you did 6 of a single colour as well, you were probably really in the zone at that point, right? You were really like nailing some work.
Yeah, it was like that. So I do try and slim them down afterwards if I've used loads. But equally, if I'm feeling it and I want to put more in, I will add more in and sort of. I think that's how much time you get to tweak at the end of something.
Yeah, because that's the
And
thing,
if you
isn't
can
it?
come back, you know, if I'm, because I always used to work ahead of my deadlines, so that I always had the time to leave it a few days and then go back and readdress it, because then you'll see the mistakes. Like stitching, if you stitch for too long, you'll make mistakes and you won't notice them, and then you're crying because you're 3 stitches the wrong direction. So the same is with design and all that. It's an awful lot quicker to rectify on a computer. But if I push my deadlines to the limit, and then it'll go and I won't, you know, it'll come and you're like, I didn't. There's something I didn't get to finish. But you could always, you know, I could then go back 3 days later and say change something else, and so you have to get to a stage where you've got to let it go, and then once it's been submitted to an editor or gone off, then it's gone. And I'm I think the early days you get very protective over what you've done, and when you get asked to alter things, it's like,
Yeah.
oh my god, but I've done it. You know, it's really personal.
My baby.
And now it's like, yeah, whatever you want.
Yeah.
Just change whatever you like.
And do you think there's also that thing of like good enough? Like I try and encourage people to appreciate that. Like good enough is good enough. You can die trying to get perfection, but you can say good enough, like is good enough, like, and that's like 90% of perfection. But for a lot of people, that will still be absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, yeah, and also sometimes you lose the freshness of something when if you'll know because I designed to you, and it'll be bang, you'll get it straight back because you've given me an idea, or I've had an idea, and I've just gone with it and sent it off to you. There's my sketch. What do you reckon? Whereas if you going over and over and over, you tend to lose the freshness. So sometimes it will improve it, and sometimes it just it makes it heavy, takes the edge off of it.
Yeah, there's like a purity of creative process, isn't there? There's like an idea comes, it hits you, you carve it, and the more you edit it, the more you start to doubt it, perhaps, or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes the working into stuff is improving it, and then sometimes it's not. It's like making it heavy. It's just taking that sort of freshness away from it.
Yeah. Do you give yourself like time deadline? Like, do you say I'm going to work on this for 2 hours, in a way of like putting an amount of urgency in? Because urgency again can necessitate smart design decisions.
Well, I think life does that to you anyway, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean? You sort of right. I want to get this done, so I'll do. And I do have days where I do lots of sketching,
Right.
and then days where I'll sit and chart. So you have inspirational days, so you're like, oh, it's flowing, it's easy today, so I, bang out loads of sketches and whatever commissions or something I've got there that I'll read and go, yep, okay, bang that out, and I tend to do a few at once. And then you'll sit down at it one day and nothing will come, and I'll be Googling and looking through millions of other things to try and bring it, and it just won't come.
And then what happens?
I'll go and eat biscuits.
Yeah, that's it. But there's that thing, isn't there? You just have to you have to learn to trust yourself, don't you? You have to go, it's not happening today, tomorrow's another day, and hopefully, you're somewhere down the... Have you ever like forced it? Have you ever like made yourself do stuff knowing that it's going to be crap, but knowing that by warming up into that space you might produce something?
Yeah, because again, I have limits now, so I have to work the 2 days I've got set to work at my computer. I need to get stuff done in those 2 days. So whereas my week was very fluid before, and you try, and sometimes you will get there, but 9 times out of 10 you're better off going and taking the dog for a walk, or giving yourself something different to do. Yeah,
and not beating yourself up.
If I go and do something else and come back to it, that can be what you need.
And those are like sound productivity principles, almost regardless of the context. That sort of thing, isn't it? It's like don't dig yourself into a crappy hole that it's like don't persist with a bad idea. Just walk away, go and stare at a tree.
Which is why it's good to have a few things going at once, because one can flow where another one's just not coming today. So you can flip through stuff.
So what kind of proportions of your designing work? Is it like 50% commissions for mags, 50% your own stuff? Do you have like book projects? How does it all work, your kind of layer cake?
Well, it used to be probably 80% magazine work.
Right.
And yeah, most of my income was magazine work. And I've put forward, books are hard to come by at the moment. So I haven't done any of those for a little while.
Have you self-published, or do you still work with...
Something I've been thinking about, but we talked about it before when you were doing your magazine, and it's like, go and do it. I'm great at that for other people. It's having that confidence to put the work in to make sure to do it yourself. But it took me years to get my website up and going.
Yeah.
And that's, so I think it's for me it's easier to work to someone else's deadline.
Right.
Because the world is so big, and it's like, what do I want to design? So it's that being an artist, what message do I want to give? What do I want to do?
Yeah.
Is hard.
I sometimes think one day when I retire, that's when I'll become an artist. Of course, being an entrepreneur, that'll be when I'm 80 and senile. But
yes, it is. And I think I like doing things for a purpose. It's like, I will make cushions, I will cover chairs, I will make Christmas decorations. But it has to be for a reason. I'm not very good at doing stuff for self-expression.
yeah, again, but it's almost like that. The good enough thing we were talking about before, and like for me, I'm not an artist. And I'm not trying to be an artist, it releases a load of tension because you don't feel the need to pursue a course that you're not comfortable with. You can go, I'm a designer, I make things that have a purpose, not an artistic expression. And you then, because otherwise...
I did all that art training, so it's, so it's like, well, I want to. So inside I want to, and I want to create. But I suppose it's just having... lost the confidence in doing it. Also, I have an attention span of a gnat, so unless it's done in a day,
right,
it's quite tricky. I'm like, well, it's not finished yet. I have all these ideas. We can decorate this room this weekend, and Spencer just goes up the wall because he's like, but it doesn't take. It takes longer. No, I don't see why anything should take longer than 2 days. So,
and then when you get that, are you like super driven? Are you like, we're decorating this thing, and by lunchtime it's like it's a hot mess, and by dinner time you've done it, sort of thing?
Yeah.
Broadly speaking.
So it's a lot of the time I am like, oh, let's get this. Can you move?
I've learned from my beloved wife that when someone's in that headspace, the thing to do is just be there and help, and not get in the way of it. Really, it does kind of make sense. Maybe you'll look back at your magnum opus. Maybe you can look at your whole catalogue of work, and you'll see that that's been your artistic endeavour.
It is quite. It's a lot, and I'm prolific.
Have you got any idea how many designs you've done?
Thousands. I think because if 25 years, say, and there was a time when I was doing a design a day and it was being published, so it's quite a lot. And I've done quite a lot of books and quite a lot. I've just done my studio again, so I've reclaimed it from a games room because the boys weren't using it, and I've got a workbench in there, and I've got lots of samples, and there's loads, and that's not even all of them because I don't have most of my stitch samples. And a lot of work got lost, so I don't even have so I think the first 10 years died in a big computer crash.
Oh, really?
So there's a lot of work I don't even own anymore. Well, I still own it, but I haven't got it physically.
But then it's funny actually that with the stitch stuff that you've got this thing actually that in theory could be around in 300 years.
Yes.
Like that's weird. That's one of the weird things about needlework, isn't it? I mean, do you ever reflect on like the context within which you sit, and the fact that needlework's been around for centuries and everyone in the world does it and that sort of stuff?
I think it's fascinating. I've got some French. I inherited them, and they were my great grandmother's, and they're French embroidery patterns, and it's like a newspaper, but it's sort of like embroidery patterns, which would just have these, and they're from like the turn of the century.
We're talking
So it
1900s rather than 2000s, of course. Yeah.
Yes, not like my great grandmother. So it is quite amazing, and I like, my friend gave me a book of her mother's that was a needlework like pamphlet, but it's like a little book on how to do things, and it tells you, how to embroider, how to darn socks, how to all that. So the housewife's
I
guide
was
to
going to say,
needlework.
does it tell you how to make yourself respectable for your man as well? Because sometimes
No,
they've wandered
it's
into that.
literally just needlework.
Okay.
And I find that's fascinating. I think it is. And when you watch costume dramas, and I can see the costumes, and and you're like, that would have been hand embroidered. I mean, it's not now, but it would have been. And if you actually go, we went to the Tower of London in the summer, and some of the work on some of the it's just phenomenal.
And we take it for granted, don't we? Because we sort of see it and we apply like the modern production process to it. But when you see like, I borrowed a sampler from the Royal School of Needlework for an exhibition, for a couple of exhibitions, and it's like 250 years old, and it's got really delicate hand embroidery that's perfect on either side, and like needle lace, and it would have been done like either by candlelight or in the daylight, because it was like from 1780 or whatever, and it's insane. Like,
well, yeah, because I again, I can no longer stitch under artificial light,
right?
So it has to be the daytime now. So it's I could get myself a daylight bulb, but no, I'd rather sit by the window and sew in the daytime.
Yeah.
And drink gin.
I was gonna say that, and I wasn't even. It's just like that makes sense to me, isn't it? So do you think? I mean, what's your like? I don't want to. I'm going to try and phrase this so it doesn't sound like I'm being on a downer about it. But what's your perspective on like the world of cross stitch? 20 odd years you've been involved, and like you say, back in the day it was a real heyday. It almost feels like it's kind of flipped now. Like the mainstream's been particularly fragile the past 12 months anyway, and yet online there's an awful lot of like stuff like bubbling under the surface. What's your take on it all?
Well, I think like all crafts, they're all going to be around forever, and there'll be fluctuations. So things will come up, like everyone's learning to crochet, or there's peaks and troughs in everything. But I think with hobbies, you invest in a hobby and you won't give it up. So even when when times are hard and you've got to watch your pennies, you will still save that for your hobby because it's important to you. So I think you still get that core of people that will do what they want to. So people will still collect. And most cross stitchers have more projects than you can do in a lifetime, and more threads, and have a passion for collecting. So it's a hobby, isn't it? It's a collector's thing. I need that pattern. I need that. I've got 400 patterns, but I need this one as well.
Yeah. It's quite amazing, isn't it? It's quite. I do think I think it's an amazing craft. I think it's something that's so misunderstood, but you take the beauty of making, and then you take like the mindfulness, like the meditative, like is quite insane. It's definitely one of the most mindful things I can think of, having tried it. Like, no disrespect to colouring in books, but
I think again that's sort of very popular, but it's not permanent, is it? I think you can like colouring in is nice, and I like sitting, and you can do it in a doctor's surgery or whatever. But if you do a stitch sample, you will have that around forever. Like you say, it does the test of time.
And then you stitch a lot of your designs yourself, right? Is that a part of your process of like working things out? So you get like the design, but you also get to know what it feels like to make the thing as well.
No.
Okay. Do you not stitch your stuff?
No. I like sewing. I like and I will mess about with things, but most of my work is sent elsewhere to be stitched. I couldn't
So like even the
physically.
stuff you've done for me.
Yeah.
Oh, because I'm like, damn, she's good. I'm so like I do that. I've got model
I have
stitches.
done some of yours, but no, not all of them. I
She's
have
so
an
fast.
amazing woman who stitches for me, and
That's
she's
fine.
much quicker. There's not enough hours in the
There
day
aren't.
for me to do it.
I would be nowhere if I had model stitches. I swear to God, since about I don't know 2011, 12, when one person said, "Oh, I can do some stitching for you," it's been like, "Oh my God." And people think I do amazing things, or sometimes there's been stuff that I've exhibited and people are like, so neat, and I'm like, yeah, no thanks. Yeah, definitely. I now make sure to
I
give a
think
little credit.
if it's little, and I know I'm like, yeah, I can get that done. That I can get that done this week, um, and fairly straightforward.
Hmm.
But the more, if I've been quite sort of involved and think I'm being a bit clever, then I will send it to someone who is amazing at doing that
Yeah.
and has a lot more patience. Because I think if I sit and sew, and I did do some models recently, um, and I have to sit and enjoy the process of doing it. Otherwise, I can't get bogged down with having gone wrong, because that takes away the mindful experience. Because the second you go, oh no, I'm done the stitches, and then it just goes to pot then, because then you're stomping around, and that lovely hour that you spent sewing and relaxing is just gone.
I'm
Because
literally
the
doing
therapy's
something at the moment that I'm model stitching because I'm making a video to do with it. So stressed on Friday about that. I was like, come on! Normally you're like, la la la. And I'm like, come on, get the stitches in! Because I've got like so much time to myself before the family comes home or whatever. I'm like, oh, it's probably like the
see that,
inverse of it.
but I think that's because you're doing it as a living.
Mm,
So it's there's a I love what I do, but it's a job, it's work.
mm,
So I think when you then do something that is, so any form of cross stitch or embroidery is always work, even if I'm doing it just for myself.
mm. Yeah, I'd agree. It's funny, isn't it? Because it's like a wisdom thing that's like, don't make your hobby your job unless you don't want it to be your hobby anymore.
Yeah.
What are your hobbies then? You like gardening,
Yes, I do like gardening. I'm not very good at it, but I like gardening. But again, that's a design
right?
thing, because it's different flowers in your pot, where you put your pot in your garden, what you're going to put here. Every time Chelsea comes on, I do a drawing and redesign my whole garden. So so I think that's just rearranging your furniture outside.
Mm,
Um, but I like being outside when it's not too cold, because I am a bit of a fair weather gardener, and I do love my greenhouse because it's fun,
mm.
and I think it's not permanent, so it doesn't matter if you do it wrong or things die, because you just put something else in.
Yeah.
So it
Do you ever have that thing early on? Because I did this. You grow things from seed. You grow saplings, like because I quite like growing things like tomatoes or whatever. So then you've got all your
yeah.
little saplings, and then you have to make decisions about which ones are good enough to survive. And in the early stages, you're like, no, I'm going to keep all of them. And you just get like 4 crap tomato plants where you could have had like one decent one or something.
I did a load this year, and I was like, right, okay, these are all chilies. So I did a row, because I couldn't see my family. So I drew faces on a load of pots and put chili plant in each. And I said, right, you're all having a competition. So I named them all after my siblings, about who's drawing. And I was convinced they were chili plants, and they weren't. They were tomatoes. So they all got a bit too big, and I couldn't do this race. So they all ended up in pots in the garden. But that was because because I couldn't see my family, I took them all in the greenhouse with me.
I thought you were going to say there was some tragic thing where you had to like just put a couple of them down, and it's like murdering your own family.
Kill them off.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was a couple of weeks, and I was going, oh, Joe's winning. This, but then they all got a bit too stemmy, and I couldn't, because I thought they can stay in those pots. That'd be lovely, but it got too big, so I had to plant them all. So I had tomato plants in every pot in the garden.
And then suddenly you've got more tomatoes, and you know what to do with, right?
Yep. So which was quite good. So I've got some in the freezer. I'm very into salsa. Made loads of that this year.
I'm quite excited about, because I've been slow picking the past couple of weeks as well, so I've got loads of slows in the freezer.
Talking of gin.
Yeah, totally. I'm just trying to think, because I feel like we've pretty much covered all the things I had on my list. I did want to, because we did this for I'll edit this bit out. But what advice you've got for people who want to perhaps pursue a career in the world of cross stitch? You got any tips? You got any design wisdom? You got any pointers?
Just go for it. Just go for it. Put it out there, and don't be put off by knockbacks. Because not everybody's going to like what you do, but someone's going to. So just, I think you need to build resilience. I think as doing anything like that, because any artwork, anything you've made, I think for in any walk of life, you've put yourself into something. You need to let go of the personal. Sorry, I keep jogging the table.
Sorry.
Let go of the because you're leaving yourself open for criticism and people going, actually I'd prefer it in red, it looks rubbish in blue, and you need to be prepared for that. And I think that's once you're prepared for that, and to not worry about it. So we like this, but could you just change it? So if you're going to do it as a living, you need to take away that personal ownership, because it's like someone criticising your children. So.
Maybe there should be a service that we could provide those of us who've been around a while, where someone puts forward a design, and almost regardless of whether it's good or not, we hit them with all the things. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, I would have done that, because I remember that. Like, I would have done that in different colours. Okay, do it in different colours. Do you know what I mean? Like many of these things, you're just like, okay, thanks for sharing. That's really useful. I think I agree. But then, because sometimes then you think you don't really want to upset someone. But I think if you upset someone, you've created something that provokes a response, and that's worthy, isn't it? The worst thing you can do. Like sometimes
it is. It's also in any walk of life. If you're a good manager, you have to tell someone something they're not going to like. And you need to do it in a constructive way or a nice way. But they're not going to like it, whatever it is. So I think it's harder trying to tell someone nicely that they've got to change something.
Yeah.
So, how do I do it with that? When basically you're going to say, look, this is great, but it's not quite right, so you need to take that edge off and you need to change that to purple. Okay?
Yeah.
And that's the best way of doing it. Because if it's not, and they'll come back with something else and come back with something else. So I think you need to be very succinct in what you deliver.
Sticking plaster.
And when you work with magazines, it's like when you're working with a new editor, or you get a new customer or a new commission, and it's like, right, you're ready for all the stream of things that are wrong with what you've sent them, because everyone has a new idea, and it takes a while to build up a relationship to know what someone's looking for. And I think that's you need to confidence. You need stuff published or stuff out there to be confident to put it out there. But I think you just have to go for it.
Do you have to design like no one is stitching? Because that's a bit like dance like no one is watching, but perhaps
Yes.
perhaps that's better, isn't it? Not
Yeah.
yeah. And the thing is haters are gonna hate. You're never gonna please all the people, are you? But the problem is you
No.
feel like. But you do. Even I've got a questionnaire that's out at the moment because it's called the Stitch of the Union, and I'm just asking people's opinion on various things to do with the magazine and whatnot. And there was one lady in there who posted a negative comment, and that's the one I've been mulling over. I'm pretty philosophical about it, I have to say, because out of all of them, I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah. So it's not like I'm like, oh my god. But still, no matter what happens, isn't it? It's always the little negative thing that's the one that burrows into your head, and you'll sit and stew
Yeah.
it all day.
Yeah. And it's you sort of, yeah. If you're going to do it as a business, you need to view it as a business.
Yeah.
And I think that's you've got to get on with it. You've got to try and deliver a good service as well. So when it's like not missing your deadlines and stuff like that. But I think my and when anyone ever contacts me, I'm like, yeah, go for it. Put it out there. Contact everyone you can try and give it a go. Because the other thing, I think there's enough people in the world for everyone. You know, if that's what you want to do, put it out there. So I'm never one of these that go, oh no, what if they're good? What if they're better than me?
Yeah.
I'm like, show us what you got. Let's have a look. It should be amazing. Yeah, do it.
That's quite a hard one to get over, isn't it? But actually, it's going. See, if you see people who are doing a better job than you are in a certain direction, you have to celebrate that fact because it's better for the greater good, isn't it? And that's kind of the thing. But yeah,
Apologies.
That's all right. It's all right. Hate is gonna hate. Yeah, because you've got a lot to answer for. I always think this is why, for me, it's lovely for you to be the first person that I do one of these interviews with because it's part of a whole.
Right.
Because you're fantastic. That femme fatale design in the noir issue is possibly my favourite design that has been in any of the magazines ever. And the best thing as well was because I have someone who helps me like re-chart patterns and I have obviously model stitches and stuff. None of them knew it was you. That was what was amazing. They were genuinely like quite floored because it's such an amazing.
See, that's something that would I love that sort of thing. Spencer loved it. You know, sort of all that film noir sort of stuff going on.
It was a fun issue. With the magazine, I never know quite how it's going to pan out. There's always a bit of guesswork, you know, when the designs come in and stuff. But I'd say most of the time it sort of slots in nicely. But yeah, this is the thing. I think it was probably the Stitches show, I want to say at the NEC, and I want to say it must have been like 2016 that we had.
Possibly.
Yeah, because the magazine started in 2017. So it must have been around then that we had the conversation. And I suppose the idea had been kind of wearing away in my head, and I'd bought this magazine that was about Lego, but it was a like grown-up Lego, and it was quite stylish, and it got me thinking about doing my magazine. And then I had a chat with you, and you were like, "Yeah, when you
Go for it." Yeah.
So it is all your fault, all of this.
And look at you now. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think I have to thank you for that. It was
You are very welcome.
quite the nudge.
I think philosophy in life is like when you're out, if you smile at someone, their day's better and they'll smile at someone else. So so sharing the love around, and that's definitely believe that is what you should do in life.
Yeah, and I think that to turn this around, then you should seriously think about self-publishing. And if you need anybody to do publishing design, there's a guy here who kind of does it for a living now, or whatever. So I could help you put a book together. It might be a smart thing to do because you've got such a retrospective. You could probably even just recycling or updating some of the many themes. I'm sure we could bang a series out in no time.
Yeah, well, I've done a lot of books that I enjoyed doing. A lot of the pattern books, the borders, and the things like that. Again, I design, and I would design to sell as many as possible. But I've never done anything on Christmas, and that's because my publisher is Turkish.
Okay.
They won't do a Christmas book.
Well then.
So that's.
All of the festive seasons, though, don't just do Christmas. Do Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and, I don't know, Chinese New Year. Bundle them all in together.
Yeah, but I think then that I get what you're saying, but that would dilute it.
Okay. No, fair. Maybe there's a 4-book
Because
series in that case.
I've
Then.
done celebration books and stuff before, but I think it's Halloween's increasing as well. It's one of the things that people stitch for, so it's a market that, again, it needs. If I'm going to do it, I need it to sell.
Yeah. I'm sure, well, for Pete's sake, you can put Maria Diaz, insert like adjective here, cross stitch pattern book, and it will sell. So
That's nice.
it's true. It's true. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for being on my designer discourse. That's what I'm calling it. Sounds fancy. And
you are very welcome.
Thanks. And yeah, let's carry on working and talking and making designs and observing from the sidelines as the world of cross stitch grows and evolves.
Well, I look forward to a show again. We can meet in person.
Yeah, right. We had a fun the last time, didn't we? I remember.
We did.
Have to get more drunk next time. Cool. Nice one. Thanks, Maria. Thanks for watching the Designer Discourse. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a really great conversation talking about the creative process, art versus craft. Some great tips there as well for any of you aspiring designers. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you like the video, please be sure to give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well. There will be more discourses coming in the future, and be sure to let me know if there's anyone you would like me to have a good old chinwag with. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Great discussion. Maria's such a good person to talk to. I hope you feel inspired to have a go at designing your own stitches as well. Thanks for being part of the magic. I'll see you soon. Happy stitching.